Jen Stevens has published a second edition of Delay Don't Deny. Should you buy it? Is it different? We're going to go over it today. I'm Jackie. I've been intermittent fasting since June 2020 after reading Jen Stevens' Fast Feast Repeat book. I then bought Delay Don't Deny, and I haven't looked back from the intermittent fasting lifestyle ever since. So before we even get into the differences, I have all of Jen's books ever since Fast Feast Repeat. I even went back and bought Delay Don't Deny, the first edition. I really enjoy her content. On top of learning so much from her, I also, no matter what, wanted to support her, because if she made a second edition of a book and I've gotten so much from her for free or low cost, I want to support her as an educator. So right off the bat, if you have the extra funds to, why not buy her book and support her? It's definitely a good read. If you like Delay Don't Deny, it's very, very similar. It's the second edition of the same book, but I think it's great to support her because her podcasts are free. She's given so much to the fasting community, and so many of us look up to her as like the mother of your journey. So in essence, regardless of what I say, it's worth buying the book. Wait, that's the first edition. It's worth buying the second edition. But let's go over what's different. First of all, they look very similar. It obviously says second edition, but they're very similar in look. The back of the second edition has a nice professional photo of Jen, and pretty similar to the story on the back. So I did read this and I did compare it. I think Delay Don't Deny, if you're getting started, it would definitely be worth buying the second edition of this book instead of the first one. You're gonna get a more complete picture. You're gonna get more of Jen's experience in this book than she had when she wrote the first one, of course. And here are some of the differences. So there's a dedication in this one, no big deal. She has a little section on how to connect with Jen. That wasn't in the first book. And then we go until chapter 6 before we find a new chapter. The clean fast, what can I have when I'm fasting? That wasn't in the first Delay Don't Deny. It's now included in here. So if you read Delay Don't Deny and then you read Fast Feast Repeat, Fast Feast Repeat introduced the idea of a clean fast, which is something that I follow most of the time, and I do think is really great to have as a foundation for your fasting journey. So it's now included in the second edition. That was no surprise to me and definitely makes sense. Chapters 8 and 9 are very similar to the first one, but they restructured the title. There's a lot of like tweaks as far as punctuation or capitalization, but those actually had a little bit of like, before it said the eating window approach, now she calls it time restricted eating, the eating window approach. So it's a little more refined, I guess. And then we go all the way to chapter 18, troubleshooting. She changed the title of that chapter. Appendix A, books and resources to help you along the way. She had Appendix A, B, C, and D in the first edition. She's kind of reordered them, and Appendix A is definitely titled differently, and her book recommendations changed. She, of course, is recommending her books and podcasts, and then there's a few other ones based on dietary needs. She recommends many more books in her, I think it was called the bibliography appendix last time. Those are the additions or the changes in titles. And I did go through and kind of compare chapter to chapter. So for instance, the Let's Talk About Exercise is in both of these books. And a lot of the text in the same chapters might be the same, but they're not exact. So I read this book, the second edition. I've read this book, and they seem similar, of course, the clean fasting, but then I would do like random spot checks just for this video purpose. And I would say, okay, let's read this paragraph and see if we can find the same paragraph in this book. And there were a lot of things that were very similar, or she'd maybe use the same phrases, but she did update and tailor the content still in the second edition. So I do feel like editorial teams, probably Jen herself, went through and updated. Even things that don't look like they're updated seem more updated, if that makes sense. The other big change that I noticed was the fasting stories, which I think is great. There are, I don't know how many are like exactly the same, but I didn't see anything that looked exact. Again, I didn't take a ton of time to like read this one word for word and compare it, but I saw that there were a lot of stories in the second edition that talked about COVID, or they talked about the year 2023 or 2022. Those wouldn't have been included in the first edition, so you get updated stories. So if you really like that part of the first edition, it might be worth it just to buy the second edition just for more stories. And who doesn't love hearing of other people's fasting success? I think that's probably my favorite part of this Delay Don't Deny, and even this one, is reading Jen's own personal weight loss story and having others that come along and say this is how it impacted me. Really ignited my fire for intermittent fasting and got me to think, okay, this might not just be another diet that I burn out on. This could be something long-term like it was for these people. And sure enough, here we are 4.5 years later, still loving the fasting lifestyle and sharing it with you guys. If you have the funds, I definitely recommend you buy the second edition. It's more updated, especially if you're new to fasting. This is the one I would start with. And if you ever lend out your book, I would definitely want to hand out the most updated version. And if for nothing else, you're supporting Jen, who has helped so many people on their fasting journeys. So it's definitely worth buying. It's not catastrophically different than the first edition, but it does include clean fasting. It has gone through revisions. It has updated stories, and I'm happy to add it to my fasting library. If you want to see me talk about Fast, Feast, Repeat, or the Fast Start Guide, 2 of Jen's other books, I'm a big fan of hers. You can check out these videos right here. This is great to get started with fasting, and this one is great to restart or to have someone a little hand hold you during your journey. Thank you so much for watching. Ciao, Donna, ciao.